today comes from Acts chapter 9, verses 36 through 43. It can be found on the front of your bulletins, and I'll give you a chance if you want to follow along in your Bible to find it. Let us be attentive to a word from our Lord. Now in Joppa there was a disciple whose name was Tabitha, which in Greek is Dorcas. She was devoted to good works, acts of charity. At the time she became ill and died. When they had washed her and laid her in a room upstairs, since Lydda was near Joppa, the disciples who heard that Peter was there sent 2 men to him with the request, "Please come to us without delay." So Peter got up and went with them. And when he arrived, they took him to the room upstairs. All the widows stood beside him, weeping and showing tunics and other clothing that Dorcas had made while she was with them. Peter put all of them outside, and then he knelt down and prayed. He turned to the body and said, "Tabitha, get up." Then she opened her eyes, and seeing Peter, she sat up. He gave her his hand and helped her up. Then calling the saints and widows, he showed her to be alive. This became known throughout Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. Meanwhile, he stayed in Joppa for some time with a certain Simon, a tanner. This is a word from our Lord. This is the word of our Lord. Let us pray. Holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts here today be holy and acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I'd like to take a minute to tell you a story about a guy we know. We all know him, but let's get to know him a little bit further. The breadth of his whole life. So this young man, he met another young man one day while he was working. The other man offered our main character here a new way of life. He said a better way of life, where he would encounter the divine at all turns, that he would finally experience what his faith is about more completely, offering him a life of opportunity to live abundantly. So he looks at his father and he says, "Dad, I'm going to go with this guy for a while." For the next 3 years, our main character follows this guy who he names as the Messiah around, with a few other people and then a whole bunch of other people. Our man seems to be one of the favorites. He even gets a new name. Always at the right side of the Messiah, answering the questions just right. Like, who do you say I am? Well, you're the Messiah. But he also doesn't quite get it. He doesn't quite get a handle on what the Messiah means. He doesn't quite understand what is happening. He doesn't quite understand the trajectory of where it's all supposed to go. So he struggles. He struggles with what the Messiah has to say. Explain that parable to me again. I didn't get it. Happened to go behind closed doors. He also seems to struggle with the reasons and what kind of salvation the Messiah brings. In fact, at one point he publicly rebukes him and then is told to get behind him. But he does experience the divine in moments, in healings, in mountaintop type experiences where he sees the prophets and Moses. He wants to make it last forever and doesn't ever want to come down off the mountain. And when the time comes for it all to play out the way the Messiah said it would, his friend getting arrested, he pulls a sword, cuts a man's ear off, and the Messiah simply looks at him and says, "You still don't quite get it." And it unfolds further. And our friend runs, denies 3 times. When he's asked, "Do you know the Messiah? Are you one of them?" "No, I'm not one of them." And then he hides behind locked doors out of fear because he doesn't want to die. And then he goes back to doing the same old thing that he's always done, even after encountering the risen Lord. And on the beach, he's given a new commandment: to tend and to feed. Now look at how far Peter's come. Look at how far Peter's come when we encounter him in Acts. Look at how far he's come as a man who's on a mission from God. Look at what he is doing, how he is fully engaged, invested as an open vessel to the work of the Spirit in his life. He is out healing. He is out changing lives in the name of God, from a doubter, a naysayer, a runner, a denier, a man who wanted it his way, to a vessel for the work of the Spirit resurrecting people, to leading, to loving, to being open to possibilities that the Spirit has for him. Peter's life takes a powerful shift in 3 years. Actually, let's just go back to the story we read last week. Even from let's go fishing, let's just go back to doing the same old thing that we know, the comfort, the avoiding of experiencing God, the moving out to doing the new thing that Jesus has told him to do. A shift from hopeless to hopeful. A shift away from scarcity to possibility. To he's gone and dead, so we might as well just ignore it, to Tabitha, get up. Tabitha, get up. To bringing back a woman whose life was so dedicated to charity and good works that the widows who she worked with stood around her holding the clothes that she made for them. There's two big things that are happening here. And there may be a lot more, but I see two big things. This is well past the crucifixion. This is well past the death of Jesus Christ. God is still active. The way the scripture reads, the Spirit resurrects Tabitha. Peter speaks the words that the Spirit gives to him. It's the Spirit's power. That is God still working well beyond the resurrection and the ascension. I mean, we haven't got to Ascension Sunday. It's coming, but hey. God is still active. The crucifixion is not the end game. It was a means leading to not the end, but the true beginning. It's a piece of the story. Too often we get stuck there. He died for my sins, and then we just pleasantly move on, right? The blood of Christ. No, God's still active. Still present, still moving. The Gospel of Mark is, as I've said, probably my favorite. Because it starts, for those of you who were in the Bible study, it starts with, in the beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ. That's how the Gospel of Mark starts. Guess what it doesn't say at the end of the Gospel of Mark? The end of the Gospel of Jesus Christ. That was purposeful. I believe it was purposeful because it means, yes, it began, but it doesn't end. It continues on, which means it continues on beyond Peter, beyond Timothy, beyond Augustus, beyond Martin Luther, Calvin, beyond Winthrop, to us. To the mothers in the room, to the fathers in the room, it goes to your kids, to the grandmothers and grandfathers in the room, to your grandkids, and your great-grandkids, and well beyond them. The work of God does not stop. It's obvious when Peter says, Tabitha, get up. He is doing the work of God. It continues on to this day. It does not end. And I know I've said this about Paul, because Paul was Paul. But even Peter, even God works in Peter. He gets a new name, Petros, which means rock, right? Don't think it's because he's sturdy and steady. I wonder if it's because he's a bit dense. Really, sit down and read the Gospels and see how poorly Peter comprehends what's going on around him. Thank God Peter doesn't understand. Because when Jesus says, this is the rock I'm going to build my church upon, that's good news for all of us, because I still don't get it. I'm still a bit of a bumbling fool when it comes down to it. Still eat shoe leather. I still eat crow. I say things I shouldn't. I do things I shouldn't. But he's still working, even through Peter, even through the rock that is him, his struggles, his doubts. When he abandons ship, he falters, he fails. But the work does not stop. God does not abandon, and God keeps on going. Paul is a great example of the immediate conversion, right? Bam, road to Damascus, scales on the eyes. 3 days later, boom, 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 now he's a Christian. Peter's us, the long conversion, the lifetime of faithfulness, the lifetime of mistakes and falters and failings. Peter's us. We're Peter. That's why he's there. It's beautiful and wonderful because God forgives again and again and again and again and again. God is the God of third and fourth. We always talk about second chances. It's the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and the seventh. It's that long conversion. It's really easy to see that he is changing step by step. We have those moments. I mean, I've been to the mountaintop style moments, and I have wanted to build a house just like Peter did and just stay there. This is amazing. I don't want to go anywhere else. Why would I want to go back to that place over there? It wasn't this great. I didn't experience God there like I do here. I should just stay here. But then you know what happens? I have to go find another mountaintop place. And then I think the same thing about the place that I had built the house on. We all do these things. It's really easy to see the changing. And what's really powerful is the movement to see how he sees possibility, how he sees opportunity, how he moves. Peter makes one of the biggest changes. Peter didn't really understand when Jesus says this was for the whole world. Peter began to open his heart to the Gentiles and to the people who were different from him. He begins to see what's possible, not what's impossible. You can ask, Cole might be able to speak to it, anyone who's been coached by me. If you say, I can't, I will lose my mind on you. In fact, there's been a new rule instated for the throwers. I can't means you can run a lap. So, Cole, you got out of that one by not going out. I'm serious. I cannot stand it. If you say I can't, what you're really saying is I won't attempt to. When you say I can't, or we say I can't, it means I'm not going to. I have no desire to even try it. I'm not going to be willing to put myself out there. I'm not going to be willing to see that there's something possibly for me to gain from this, so I can't do it. We tell it to make an excuse to get ourselves out of something. Peter's move is from scarcity mentality to possibility mentality. The Messiah can't die. I don't know him. Lock the door. It's all going to hell in a handbasket. It's all falling apart. No. I got to go back to doing the thing that comforts me. And Jesus is saying, I told you to do something new. And he's doing that something new. It's that mentality of scarcity in the language. It won't last. I can't. It's not enough. I'm not enough. I don't have the time, the gifts. See it? You hear it? all around us, all the time. It's so much of it's inner dialogue. I can't do this. I won't do this. I'm not able to do this. Peter's on he's already on his way to do very important business. Tabitha dies, and so someone sends word to him and says, Peter, come. Peter, we need you. He could have said, I got better things to do. She's dead. Bury her. Move on. But instead, we see this change of direction, this altering of the moment, of off the path, the interruption to an opportunity. So he goes, interrupted from his mission, from where he's headed, to something new. See, in our scarcity language, we miss these moments, right? I don't have the time. There's that person at work or at school or on the street, they pop up, and you're like, oh, how'd I get out of this? I don't have the time for this right now. Right? Come on. I got some head shakings up here. I got two people who are like, yeah, absolutely, you know. What if we functioned like a coffee shop mentality? What if our mind worked like that, where it's conversations and it's opportunities and possibilities, rather than, ooh, I don't have time for you right now. I'm going to go down the other aisle in the grocery store because I just don't have the time. But I do have the time, because here's the thing. When we move to possibilities, those are God moments. Those are the moments, the interruptions, or opportunities. Those are the moments where we experience the divine. I can tell you how many times, well, I can't actually tell you how many times that I'm doing this thing, and I'm focused on this thing, and someone walks in, and I'm like, oh, I'm tired, I'm a little behind, and they come in, and it's a God moment. We pray, we work, whatever it is in that moment, we build that relationship. We move away from a mentality of scarcity and not enough to see gains and opportunities. Some of the best moments in my ministry, in my life, have been divine interruptions. Wasting time with God. Wasting time with someone else. I have a story I want to read to you all. Oh, I did bring it. About this change in mentality, and it's really good. And this book's really good too, The Art of Possibility. This is called The Monk's Story, and I'm going to leave you with this. A monastery has fallen on hard times. It was once part of a great order, which, as a result of religious persecution in the 17th and 18th century, lost all of its branches. It was decimated to the extent that there was only 5 monks left in the mother house, the abbot and 4 others, all of whom were over 70, clearly a dying order. Well, deep in the woods surrounding the monastery was a little hut that a rabbi from a nearby town occasionally used for a hermitage. One day it occurred to the abbot to visit the hermitage and see if the rabbi could offer any advice that might save the monastery. The rabbi welcomed the abbot and commiserated. Oh, I know how it is, he said. The spirit has gone out of the people, and almost no one comes to the synagogue anymore. So the old rabbi and the old abbot wept together. They read parts of the Torah and spoke quietly of deep things. The time came when the abbot had to leave. They embraced. It has been wonderful being with you, said the abbot, but I have failed in my purpose for coming. Have you no piece of advice that might save the monastery? No, I'm sorry, the rabbi responded. I have had no advice to give. The only thing I can tell you is that the Messiah is one of you. When the other monks heard the rabbi's words, they wondered what possible significance they might have. The Messiah is one of us? One of us here at the monastery? Do you suppose he meant the abbot? Of course. It must be the abbot who's been our leader for so long. Well, on the other hand, he might have meant Brother Thomas, who is undoubtedly a holy man. Certainly he could not have meant Brother Elrod. He's so crotchety. But then Elrod is very wise. Surely he could not have meant Brother Philip. He's too passive. But then, magically, he's always there when you need him. Of course he didn't mean me. Yet, supposing he did. Oh Lord, not me. I couldn't mean that much to you, could I? As they contemplated in this manner, the old monks began to treat each other with an extraordinary respect, on the off chance that one of them might be the Messiah, and on the off chance that each monk himself might be the Messiah, they began to treat themselves with extraordinary respect. Because the forest in which it was situated was beautiful, people occasionally came to visit the monastery, to picnic or to wander along the old paths, most of which led to the dilapidated chapel. They sensed the aura of extraordinary respect that surrounded the 5 old monks, permeating the atmosphere. They began to come more frequently, bringing their friends, and their friends brought friends. Some of the younger men who came to visit began to engage in conversation with the monks. After a while, one asked if he might join, and then another, and another. Within a few years, the monastery became once again a thriving order, and thanks to the rabbi's gift, a vibrant, authentic community of light and love for the whole realm. One of you might be the Messiah. All of you might be the Messiah. All of us are. We all have a piece. It's who we are. We were created in that image. So it's the possibilities. It's the possibilities that lie within how we interact and how we love and how we care and what we do with one another and for this world. It's the possibilities. To the point where we can say, Tabitha, get up.